Hi, Qianer. As we know, the global memory chip shortage has been affecting tech companies almost everywhere. How have Chinese tech giants from Alibaba to ByteDance to Tencent been reacting to this shortage based on new reporting?
We published an exclusive story this week, right at this front. We are seeing a very interesting shift right now. For example, Alibaba, ByteDance, and Tencent, all three of China's biggest tech powerhouse, are actively turning to Chinese memory chip makers to looking for memory chips to power their data centers. So here's some context. So as AI models get bigger and more complicated, and more people use them, the memory chip demand is exploding. So every single chatbot prompts, every AI query require memory chips. And China, with over 1 billion internet users, it's feeling the pressure faster than almost anywhere else in the world. So what these Chinese big tech companies have done is to reach initial agreement on pricing, on volume, and on quality with China's two biggest memory chip makers, which is Yangtze Memory Technologies, known as YMTC, and Changxin Memory Technology, or CSMT. Central to these deals are commitment on future purchase orders, giving the Chinese chip makers some certainty that they need to expand their factories.
Right, so let me just make sure I get the acronyms correct. One, YMTC and CXMT are the two
Yes.
leading memory chip suppliers in China. I have a feeling we might start hearing these two acronyms more frequently. But let's start from the basics. Why haven't Chinese tech companies previously been procuring more from YMTC and CXMT?
That's a good question. Historically, Chinese memory chip industry was seen as an underdog or also run, well behind Samsung and SK Hynix of South Korea and Americans Micron. So Chinese tech firms simply prefer sourcing from the global tech leader, global memory leader for reliability and production scale. But that playbook has broken down on two fronts. First, Americans Micron has effectively been shut down of China since 2023 because of the escalating U.S. and China tension. So that's one global supplier gone. Secondly, Samsung and SK Hynix are still operating in China, but they are turning down requests for more supply to Chinese company because all three memory makers, Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron, they are now shifting the bulk of their production to something called as high bandwidth memory, or HBM, which is the premium stack chips that power cutting edge AI processors such as those from NVIDIA, like NVIDIA's Blackwell or Rubin GPU. So this kind of production strategy is squeezing the availability of standard memory chips. So Chinese tech companies aren't, turning to local supplier out of nationalism. So they are doing it because they had been effectively left without better options.
So I noticed you said standard memory chips. What are those standard memory chips, and can those two Chinese manufacturers make them? Are they good enough?
That's where it get nuanced. I would say honestly, that's the most important questions for the long term. YMTC mainly means NAM, MAMD. Those are the chips that can store data for long term. And CSMT means DRAM, DRAM. They are the chips that can temporarily store chips for active usage. So the good news for Chinese chip makers is that they have been making progress in their memory chip making technology, and they are closing the gap. That means that, and also their products follow industry-wise specification. That means a chip from Chinese maker could be swapped in for one from other companies such as Samsung and Micron of the same generation. But there's also a challenge. So both YMTC and CSMT are state-owned and have received billions in government funding, and they are the core part of Beijing's push for semiconductor self-sufficiency. But they are operating under a huge handicap because US, Japan, and Netherlands have all restricted export of the most advanced chip-making tools to China. So that limits how fast and how far YMTC and CSMT can scale up and improve their chip-making technologies.
So this,
So I would say the honest answer is the capacity is growing, and the threat need and these new purchase commitment from Alibaba and ByteDance and Tencent will help support all these two chip makers expansion.
But circling back to the restrictions you mentioned from US, Japan, and Netherlands on chip making tools, this is a part of US-led export control or
Exactly.
semiconductor technology embargo against China, right? So then I guess then a bigger question is, can the two Chinese memory chip makers actually have enough capacity in the foreseeable future to supply this sudden rising demand from Chinese companies?
I would say, like I mentioned before, obviously the capacity is growing due to all these fundings and support from Chinese government, but these US-led export control are setting the real ceiling of how quickly these two domestic memory chip makers can ramp up, given the technology restriction they are working around.
I see. But why can't the Chinese company just go to the two South Korean companies, Samsung and SK Hynix, asking for them to supply more of those standard memory chips? I know you mentioned that they are prioritizing HBM. Is that the only reason? Because that would affect the supply that they can have to, say, American tech companies too.
This is definitely not the only reason. In fact, Alibaba, ByteDance, and Tencent had repeatedly went to Samsung's and SK Hynix in the recent months and trying to ask for more supply. But these two South Korean companies have been prioritizing the order from US companies such as Microsoft, Meta, and Google, which are also hungers for all these memory chips.
I see. Well, thank you very much, Qianer. It's definitely a fascinating and developing story, and I'm sure that you will continue to report on this. Thank you.